Welcome to the Lone Star Keto Podcast. I'm your host, Amber. My vision for this podcast is to showcase experts in the keto carnivore community, as well as those who have compelling stories that inspire and give others hope. My wish is that no one has to suffer like I did. If you find value in this podcast, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification button. And as always, feel free to share. Thank you so much for your support. Hi, I'm Amber, and welcome to the Lone Star Keto Podcast. Today I have a very special guest with us. Her name is Natalia, and I'm going to let her say her last name in just a second. But she is a binge recovery coach, and this is something that I deal with a lot with my clients. So I wanted to have her on and pick her brain. Welcome, Natalia.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm Natalia, and I'm Natalia Staniszewska, which you might recognize that it's a Polish name because I'm Polish, but currently I'm living in the Netherlands. And yes, indeed, currently I do work mostly with people who struggle with binge eating and overeating.
That's awesome. I can't wait to get started on this. But first, let's kind of hear your background, because if I understand it correctly, you actually dealt with binge eating. That was something you struggled with. I want to know all about that, your background, what led you to having this issue that you think, and how it affected you, and why you do what you do now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I would love to share with everybody. Maybe it can resonate with many people. So I think that I had struggles with food like all my life, because in my family, we didn't really. Food, I would say that food was the way we expressed our emotions. So we would celebrate with food. I was soothed with food. So very early in my life, I learned to cope with many struggles in my life with food. But the first binge eating, I would say that it started when I was after I went on my first diet. So I went on my first diet at the first year at the university, and then I just was super hungry and I started binging. I think that's pretty also common, that after the first diet people lose weight, and then that restriction leads to binge eating. And then I actually would say that I recovered for a while by going on a plant-based diet. And for a while, I was totally okay. I didn't struggle with binge eating. But then after, I think, 2 years, my problems came back. And then it was a lot harder for me to recover. So I had to find my own way, because nobody really talked about binge eating back then. So I had to, do a lot of research and try to find something that really resonates with me. And for me, the neuroscientific perspective made sense, how to rewire our brain, how to change our habits, because I also studied neuroscience. So I think that I just found something that resonated with me. And then it was a lot of trial and error. So mainly I would say that I recover from my binge eating through changing habits, ditching the processed foods, and also mindful eating, maybe later on a little bit of intuitive eating. So in general, making some healthy habit changes.
Awesome. Okay, let's also kind of start with a definition of binge eating. When you say that, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that for most people, it is just when they, in a short period of time, when they start eating food and they eat a lot more food than it would be recognized as normal. So in a short period of time, you eat a lot of food, you feel out of control. Like with overeating, I think that you would feel like, oh, I could stop eating, but I don't want to. But with binge eating, I think that there is this lack of control. You feel like you just have to stuff your face with food. So the binge eating, I would say that it's there's a lot of lack of control, eating too much, eating until you uncomfortably full, and also the guilt, the shame, and the negative emotions associated with the binge eating episode. And I think that diagnostic criteria also would say that this binge eating has to happen at least once a week for 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. So if you were to diagnose somebody, what specific things are you looking for to see if they actually are really a binge eater or if maybe it's something else? What criteria do you use?
Honestly, I don't diagnose people because for me, if you come to me and you say that you struggle with this and that, I think that this is a problem already. If you recognize it as a problem, we can work on it. So I don't need to categorize you and tell you if you struggle with binge eating or just overeating. For me, it's very important, your what do you think about it? If you think that you are losing control, once a month around food, and that's a problem for you because that brings you a lot of negative emotions, I think that it's already worth working on it. So it doesn't matter how often you do it. This is my
Awesome.
take on it.
Okay, so okay, let's say somebody is not really sure that they have an issue. How would they kind of go about examining themselves to see if maybe they do have an issue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so probably I would start with maybe emotional aspect. Yeah, like how do you think? Do you lose control around food? How do you feel about it? How do you explain your behavior to yourself? Do you feel ashamed of it? Are you doing it alone? Have you ever shared your problem with like anybody? I think that those are kind of like the question I would ask that person, because after all, I think that it is pretty subjective, because for some people, even eating like a smaller amount of food, but they are losing control around this kind of food already, so sort of like the amount of food doesn't matter as much.
Okay, so what are some ways for somebody to help tackle the issue? Like, what would you recommend them to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say that the process to recovery is quite individualized. So we have to get to root cause, because for many people it might be something different, right? Because for some people it's restriction because they are on a restrictive diet, or they mentally restrict or physically restrict. For other people, it might be a way to deal with the emotions. For other people, it might be blood sugar roller coaster because they are constantly eating bad diet, also emotional eating, stress eating. So I think that it's important to find the cause behind it. But after all of that, it sometimes just becomes a habit. So whatever happens in people's life, they just reach for food to deal whatever happens.
Absolutely. So if somebody has like an emotional connection to food and you've kind of figured out that that is the root cause, what would you have them do to get them out of that?
Mm-hmm. To feel, I would recommend to start feeling their emotions, because somehow we as an adults, maybe as a children, we were already taught to keep it together, don't show your emotions, you don't have to cry, there's no need to cry. So from the very early age we were taught that to suppress our emotions. So I think that it's important for everybody to learn how to feel our feelings without needing to numb them, to buffer with food or with alcohol. So there are before we can change any behavior, I think that first we have to recognize what is happening. So be aware what kind of emotions do we feel. And then after awareness comes acceptance. So we also have to learn how to accept what we feel. And after only that, we can change that. But I think that just sitting with the emotions and being comfortable to it, leaning towards it, welcoming it, those are like important parts, because we don't want to like escape from our life and always buffer with food.
What is the number one thing that you think you deal with as far as being the root cause? What do you see the most often?
I would say that the most often is still, unfortunately, just restriction. Just many people going on to very restrictive fat diets, maybe doing some shakes or trying to survive on like 1,200 calories a day, which is the amount that, toddler needs. So I think that just being in this diet culture mentality and thinking that you have to shrink yourself and eating very low calorie diet that, slow down your metabolism, I think that this is number one problem, because then your body tries to rebel against it. So it is like a survival instinct that you're gonna have those urges to binge, because your body just wants to feed itself, because you are creating the starvation mode, right? So your body will want to satisfy the hunger.
Absolutely. So I read something on one of your posts one time about how restrictive eating, dieting, whatever you want to call it, can actually lead to issues with your brain. Talk a little bit about that, because I find that fascinating. And since you kind of studied this, I want to know more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Restrictive diets, if you have less calories, that means that you have also less nutrition, because less vitamins, minerals, which means that, for example, your neurotransmitters in your brain might be not produced in the amount that they should be. So restrictive diets can just cause structural and functional changes in the brain. We know that after we lower our calorie intake, we may feel more depressed, more fatigued. So there are things associated with very low calorie diets.
And so, is this something that can have lasting effects, like way far into your life, as far as your health goes, and etc.? And is there a way to reverse the damage? And is there anything that can't be reversed?
I personally believe that it can be reversed, and I think that the most studies were done on people who suffer from anorexia, because anorexia is a severe calorie restriction. So it shows that in the brain there are some structural changes, but it can be reversed. And I had my own personal experience, because at some point in my life I was very thin, and I lost my period for like 2 years. But with the adequate caloric intake and with the adequate nutrition, I got my period back, which means that even there were some like hormonal changes, and my body, of course, didn't wanted me to carry any children. That's why this menstrual cycle was stopped. I was able to reverse it, and I know that many other women are able to do it as well. So this is one of the example that we can brought the health back.
I love that. Okay, and this is kind of interesting, because you follow a plant-based diet. I follow a meat-based diet. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, because I find it very interesting, because you say that the plant-based diet kind of helped you get over the binge eating. And I've heard other people say a meat-based diet does. So I'm curious, and you're one of these people who I just love, because even though you do eat differently, you're okay with other people eating the way they eat if it works for their health, as am I. If it works for you, it's all great, fine. So how do you think about the blood sugar regulation? Because you did mention that as one issue causing some binge eating. So by eating proper nutrition, it helps greatly, because it allows you to be able to deal with the other issues and not the constant hunger on top of everything else. So it makes sense. So what do you think is the core of that? Because we're completely different, but yet it still helped both of us be able to get over that. Mm-hmm. So what do you think the underlying commonality is?
Mm-hmm. I think that for everybody, something else will work, and we'll find everywhere testimonials about different diet working for, I don't know, PCOS, reversing diabetes. So there will be people who will reverse pre-diabetes with carnivore diet. There will be people who do it on a plant-based diet. So I think that everybody has to find find something that works for them and just try it. And in my case, it was also aligned with my goals, right? And I found a compelling reason. So for me, that was helpful because it was easier for me maybe to restrict myself because I had some ethical reason to do not do that. So it wasn't only the physiological response to, I don't know, maybe eating carbohydrates or just changing micronutrients. It didn't matter as much as a psychological reason that I had compelling why I want to do that and why I want to follow that diet. But of course, yeah, I agree that maybe with the meat-based diet, the hormonal regulation is totally different, and it might help many people because we know that maybe protein is more satiating. But for example, for me, what is satiating is, for example, volume. So I'm volume eater, right? So I will be more satiated after eating something which looks bulky, like a salad, and that satiates me. When for other people, it would be like, oh, I can't do it. And they would prefer to eat something smaller, but really calorie dense. So for example, some kind of steak or maybe nuts. But for me, those kind of things just don't work. So I don't know, maybe there is something with like stretch receptors in our stomach that some people react differently for different things. Also our microbiome, because I've been on this kind of diet for such a long time that none of the plant foods doesn't cause any like bloating or anything like this. So my microbiome just is adjusted to it. And it also, so I think that it's somehow holistically all of the things I'm doing works for me. And I think that there are also people for whom it works, but there will be people for whom it doesn't work and they have to, I don't know, maybe go on strict keto diet. Maybe they have some sensitivities. Maybe the plant food really works bad for them because they have some immune diseases. So there is plethora of people, and for everybody, I guess something else will work.
I totally agree with that. So I saw somewhere where you had tried a vegan approach to keto. Are you still doing that?
No, I guess to be honest, it was just an experiment, like for YouTube.
Okay, how did that go? I'm curious because to me it seems like that would be so hard to do, plant-based.
It wasn't that hard. I guess that, in my opinion, following that kind of diet for a long time would be a problematic because, for example, I didn't, when I, put my macronutrients and what I ate to like chronometer, then I saw that I didn't get enough calcium and also like iron, which is needed.
Pretty important.
So, yeah. So I don't do that. I just did that as an experiment, and that was like totally fine. But I just prefer different style of eating. But to be honest, from time to time, because I want to keep that metabolic flexibility, from time to time, for a couple of days, I will try to go a little bit low carb, or I will extend my intermittent fasting just to keep my body this metabolic flexibility that I'm able to burn both carbs and both fat that I can switch the fuel.
Very interesting. Now, did you ever try testing your blood to kind of see what your blood sugar does? That is, the basis of pretty much everything I do is trying to keep your blood sugar regulated. So I'm very curious. I'm interested. I'm not, trying to find a way to, say my diet's better. I'm generally curious how that worked out.
So from time to time, I do wear continuous glucose monitor from like Freestyle Libre, and it works. It's a sensor that works for like 14 days, and you wear it on your arm. For people who don't know what is that, so I would say that I can eat in a way that is very good for my blood sugar, and I can do also other activities that will support healthy blood sugar regulation. So I would say that at this point, I know what kind of like little hacks to do to keep my blood sugar stable. But of course, if I would eat fruit, or I do have meals that are not really aligned with the principles of eating for healthy blood sugar levels. So from time to time, I'm gonna get get a huge spike of glucose, but it's fine. I guess that from time to time it doesn't really bother me. But in general, I would say that it is doable even if you eat more carbs, especially if you do it wisely. For example, after or before a workout. That's the first example.
And what about naked carbs? You've talked a little bit about that too. So explain what that is and how, regardless of your diet, how working with or actually eliminating the naked carb part is beneficial.
Yeah, totally. So naked carbs are carbohydrates that you eat without any sort of fat or protein. So, for example, simple carbs like maybe some crackers, bread, fruits. Those are naked carbs. So they will definitely cause a blood sugar spike, and it is seen in a continuous glucose monitor if you do it. So it is not, I wouldn't advise doing that, because then you get a huge spike. You also get a huge spike of insulin. And if you're gonna, continue doing that all day for a couple of weeks, then you're gonna have some problems. That's why if you are going to eat carbs, it's better to pair them with some fats, with some proteins, so that the spike is lowered, because it slows down the digestion, it just slows down the release of glucose, so the glucose spike will be lower.
I am fascinated by that, and that is one thing that I plan on testing. I have my CGM. I haven't put it on yet, just too much craziness. So I plan on doing that, and I'm hoping to do it like Sunday, so I have that day, that 24 hours to calibrate or whatever. But I want to test that because I find that just so interesting. And I've heard of the people who have tested it and swear that that happens. So I'm super curious about that. Let's talk a little bit about how blood sugar dysregulation can affect binge eating and why it's important not to have these big spikes all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that what I've gathered from my information is that I feel hungry when the trend of glucose is going down. So I don't have to really have a very low glucose level to feel hunger, but if it is going down, I feel different and I feel hungry. So I think that similar situation may happen with people who struggle with binge eating. If they are eating a lot of processed foods and they have like a blood sugar roller coaster, then they're gonna be disconnected with their bodies. They won't really know what true hunger is, because every time the glucose level will go down, they may experience hunger, then they will again reach for some processed foods that again gonna spike glucose level. So I think that for many people, like bad nutrition and reaching for processed foods might contribute to maybe sometimes binge eating, but also like overeating and maybe snacking. And so this is what I see. That's why it's important to, when we are working with people who struggle with binge eating, to also take a look at what are they eating.
Absolutely. And food addiction and binging kind of go hand in hand, don't you think? Because it just makes it that much harder to deal with the issue at hand if you're putting all this addictive foods in your body, because let's face it, many foods are designed specifically to addict you. They have scientists that work on that. So how does that kind of work against you, together but against you?
Yeah, totally. It's good that you've mentioned that the foods are designed in that way. There are scientists who are paid to find a bliss point of food.
Yes.
So yes, there are some people who will be super sensitive, because in our brain we've got something called reward center, and for some people, different kind of foods may hit their reward center in a different different way, so that they may feel very addicted to, or they may perform like addictive behaviors towards the food. So I think that if you are on a wrong type of diet and you feel like you have like addictive personality, then you have a problem. And that's why maybe we see this obesity epidemic right now, because we are living in obesogenic environment where all of the foods have addictive properties, and we don't have to really work for them. It's not like we have to hunt for cookies, because they are just available for us. We can call somebody to bring us food. So we are far away from from how we evolved.
Very far from that. It's kind of amazing. And, for people who don't know this information, it makes me sad. And that's why I do what I do, and why you do what you do, trying to bring light to this. And, there's a real negative view of people who have a binge eating disorder. And I see this all the time. And quite frankly, it ticks me off, because there's this, oh, well, you just don't have any self-control. You just need to buckle down, gut up, and do it, because you're just lazy and, you just don't want to do the work. Well, they don't understand that it's an eating disorder. It's a disorder. Would you tell an alcoholic that? Oh, well, just put down the booze. It's that easy. You have no self-control. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that negativity is just not helpful. It's just not helpful. It's not going to help anybody. Oh, okay. Now that you said that, I'm just going to put the food down and never binge again. I mean, that's not helpful.
I totally agree that there is a stigma around it, and many people just believe that it's a willpower problem, self-control problem, and that's totally not true. And that prevents many people from reaching out for help, because they think that this is something that they have a problem, maybe that it's a personality or some kind of psychological problem, and that's very harmful. Because many people will eat more intuitively, they will be like normal eaters, and for them it's really hard to imagine how do you struggle with food, like what are you, don't feel satiety. And for many of us that may be also true, because if I'm thinking about people who struggle with gambling addiction, for me it's also hard to wrap my head around that. Like, come on, like you
right, just stop going to the casino, right? Yeah.
So partially I do understand people who don't understand people who struggle with binge eating disorder, but I think that that's important to just to know that maybe we don't understand something, but we still should have compassion towards those people, and do not like give unsolicited advice. Like, okay, you struggle with something, maybe I don't understand it, but I think that you still deserve help. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I find it very frustrating, because like I'll post something and then in the comments, oh, well, it's just these little rude things. And I'm like, obviously you've never dealt with an eating disorder, or maybe you've never had an addiction of anything. And so it makes it really hard to understand, but to be so put down to all these people who do struggle, because there are a lot of people that struggle. Okay, let's talk about intuitive eating, since you brought that up. I find the concept, I don't know what the right word is, but I always wished I could be an intuitive eater. I'm not. I can't. I'm not one of these. I mean, I'm better now. I can, like have something off plan on very specific occasions, and it doesn't throw me down a rabbit hole. Other people it would. So how does one become an intuitive eater when they have a binge eating disorder, or they're like severely addicted to carbs or sugar or whatever it may be?
Mm-hmm. I think that the best is to approach it like every other skill. like, like training yourself to eat intuitively, which at the beginning is gonna take a lot of effort, because, for example, you have to assess what is your hunger, what is your satiety before, after meal, what are my emotions, am I eating from psychological reasons because I'm really hungry, or am I eating from emotional reasons? So I think that gaining a lot of self-awareness somewhere down the road may help us to eat more intuitively. But there's also an issue with, with intuitive eating and intuitive eating trademark, because intuitive eating for me is like eating with intuition, as you said, maybe using your brain, but also your intuition, and mixing it up together so that you eat what you know that is good for you, but from time to time you eat something else, but it doesn't, you don't spiral. But there is also, the intuitive eating, like intuitive eating book and trademark intuitive eating. So that is like totally something else. I don't know what was the question.
You pretty much answered that. But I actually read a book, The Intuitive Eating or whatever. I don't know. I'm sure there's a bunch of them. But this was one of the popular ones, one of the first ones that came out. And as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, yeah, that's what I'm missing. That's what it is. Yes. And I got all excited. And it didn't work for me. It just didn't work for long. And it's like, I wanted so desperately to be an intuitive eater. But I realize now, looking back, that it was the addiction talking. It was, just, you're either an abstainer or, you can moderate. I'm not really a moderator. Again, right now, I can have a little something every once in a blue moon, and I'm fine with that. But there are many people who can't. So I just find that whole concept very interesting. So your kind of definition of intuitive eating is a little bit different than like what you said would have been in that book, because, everybody wants to hear that you can eat whatever food you want. It's just, moderation. So what is your view on moderation?
Well, I totally agree that it works for some people. And I wanted to go back and say that I've also read the intuitive eating book. And the first time I read it, like, oh my God, that's the answer for everything everybody should know about this book. It's going to heal the world. And after a while, it just not what I wanted. And you are right that this addictive voice, I call it like more like primitive brain, my primitive brain, started talking, and you're like self-sabotaging yourself, because you don't know if when you're eating a cookie, whether it's your addiction talking or whether it's you're just following your intuition and you're doing what you're supposed to do. So for me, there was just too much confusion, and it didn't really that much help me. So at some point, I still believe that it works for some people, and totally there are many people who can moderate, and even if they are moderating highly processed foods, they are still able to achieve their goals, physique goals, health goals. But I don't think that it's for everybody. That's my answer.
I would love to be an intuitive eater, one that can moderate things, but I also understand that where I come from, that's just not possible. And the other thing too that really kind of bothers me with all of that is, I'm not saying never, ever, ever, ever in your life ever have a food again. But let's get real. There are some foods that are just better for you and will help your body, and other foods are just not good for your body. Whether you can tolerate it or not, it's just not a good thing. What is your view on that? For instance, there are different ways of doing a vegan diet, right? You can do it a very wholesome way, or you can eat a lot of junk food. The same on a carnivore diet, honestly, because you still can have processed, sausage that has a bunch of crud in it. I mean, you know what I mean. And keto too, same thing. You can do. What is your view on that? I mean, where should the importance be? Nutrition or?
Yeah, so for me, I was always interested very much in health and in holistic approach to health. So for me, the quality of food is really important. So I invest in, organic foods, and I'm trying to make good choices. So for me, this is pretty important because I am again, health is important for me, but I know that during maybe binge eating recovery for some people, like the nutrition maybe isn't as important. Maybe it's first important to heal your attitude towards it, because if you believe that sugar is toxic and it's gonna kill you, it's not helping your recovery, because we have to start neutralizing food and see it as, you know uh, this food is not good, this food is not bad, they just cause different like metabolic response, hormonal response in your body, and it is your choice after all. You may choose to eat that food even if you know that maybe after that you're gonna feel shitty, but it is your decision after all. And I think that it matters what you do most of the time, and what is the reason behind what you are doing, because I might choose healthier option, but I'm choosing healthier option because I'm choosing healthier option, and not because I'm afraid of unhealthy option. I think that it is also your intention behind your choices matters.
I get that. That makes sense to me because like some people like with the carnivore diet, they're like, oh, well, you're scared of carbs. No, I'm not scared of carbs at
Yeah.
all. I don't have a problem with carbs, whatever. But I do recognize what it does to my blood sugar, which in return affects my insulin, which in turn affects my health. And
Yeah.
I'm choosing not to do that. I'm not scared of them. I don't demonize them. I don't think that, no person ever in the world should ever have another carb. No, I don't believe that. So I like that approach. And so with most of your clients, you are dealing obviously with the mental and the psychological. And do you ever move into the nutrition part with them, or is it strictly more of the mental aspect of it?
Yes, I do also nutrition, but it's more like monitoring to check what they are doing, and if they are making like a huge mistakes, then I'm trying to correct it. But in general, diet isn't as that important. Of course, I'm giving some tips what can be improved. But I had person on a keto diet who was actually type 1 diabetic, so I worked with her. I'm also working with like people who are on the normal, like regular standard diets. So if I see that there are big mistakes like nutritionally, then I intervene. But other than that, it's like, yeah, your diet, your
Yes.
choice. I'm going to give you some principles which I would prefer you to follow. But again, if you are aware of the consequences, like the choice is your. What kind of diet do you follow?
Awesome. I like that. Give me some causes of cravings. Like what makes somebody crave? What do you think some of those issues are?
Well, cravings are always caused by our thought, and what is behind our thought, that might be different things. So our cravings can be caused by just because maybe we have because our brain is programmed to wanting high calorie foods because they help with our survival. So that's one of the things, that because our brain is programmed that way. The second thing is that maybe it's a low blood sugar level. Maybe those are other hormones. Maybe we have a craving because we are insulin resistant. Maybe because we have high amounts of stress. Maybe we didn't sleep enough. And maybe it's just a habit. Maybe we want to maybe we have a craving because we want to regulate our emotions through food. Maybe it's because we have cravings due to hormonal cycle. So again, there are lots of causes.
So do you believe that if, say, you're having proper nutrition, you're not putting a bunch of junk on in your body, your blood sugar is regulated, do you believe that people can actually crave foods that they need? For instance, lacking a certain vitamin and, craving a specific food that has that vitamin in there. Do you believe that's a biological thing, or is that still more of a mental thing?
I think that it is both, but I do think that we have some kind of like body wisdom, and that we might crave things because we lack them nutritionally. And it was proven, especially with pregnant women. Pregnant women may even crave like clay because they need calcium. Yeah. So, or people may want to eat dirt. So there are some nutritional. So I think that some cravings might be caused by our body wisdom, and it indicates that we have some nutritional deficiencies.
I always hear that, like if you're craving chocolate, it means a certain thing. I think what is it, zinc or something? I don't remember what it is.
I think it's magnesium, and when you're,
it's like, oh well, I'm craving chocolate, so obviously I'm deficient in whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's funny, but I do believe that too. I think that if your body, if you give your body what it needs, and it doesn't have all that other noise going on with your hormones hijacked and stuff, that it does kind of tell you what it needs. And you can trust your body and listen to that voice. Where I know at one point the cravings, I'm sorry, your body doesn't need a cookie. It just doesn't need a cookie. Yeah. I don't care what anybody says. You crave a cookie, it's a different story than if you crave like red meat or broccoli or whatever it may be. There's a huge difference there. But I hear it all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, so I thought this was interesting too. Your approach is one of the things you do is trying to get your clients to postpone their binge, like try to hold off their binge. And how do you go about doing that? And how is that beneficial? What is that doing to your brain?
I think that delaying the binge is pretty important, because let's all remember that every habit is wired into our brain as a cascade of actions. So we've got the trigger, then we have a thought like desire, then we have an urge, then we have a binge, like an action of behavior. So it is all wired in the brain as a cascade of things. So I think that for some people it may become like a automatic response. Like, I've got a craving, I have to eat. Like, no thought, I'm on autopilot, I'm just reaching for food. So building that pause is an important moment when we can teach our brain to just decouple those two activities, decouple urge to binge from the binge itself, because right now maybe in the brain they are wired together. But when we are building that pause, we are decoupling those two activities from each other. And in this moment, when you build that pause, when you're trying to delay the binge, you also have a moment to reflect what is going on. What do I feel? Do I feel discomfort? What kind of emotions do I feel? Who is in the driver's seat? Is it my primitive brain or is it my rational brain? So I think that this is very important aspect of a binge eating recovery to stop this compulsive and impulsive behavior.
Okay, you mentioned primitive brain. How does that play in with everything? I was kind of interested in that.
Yeah, so our urges, in my opinion, come from our primitive brain. So the primitive brain is where our habits are stored. And our rational brain is where we have our planning, our goals. So of course, when I want to binge, it's not my rational brain, because my rational brain knows about that. I don't need that food. I have different goals. I don't want to gain weight. So this comes from our primitive brain. And primitive brain has only three goals in life, like avoid pain, seek for comfort, and be as efficient as is possible. That's why we build habits. So the urge to binge usually comes from our primitive brain. So we have to teach our primitive brain to really calm down, because we want to make decisions from our rational brain, from our true self.
I love that. That is perfect. Okay, let's see. There was something I wanted. Oh, okay. I want to know, you talk a lot about self-respect, self-acceptance, and self-love. Can you break those down and kind of talk about the difference? What does that mean, and why are they important?
Well, I think that it is important because it just feels good. Love feels good. So why why would you hate yourself, or why would you reject part of yourself if you can just feel love, if you can give yourself compassion, if you can accept yourself? And you can do those things just because they feel good. And all of our, if you want to change as a person, if you have some kind of goals, you cannot guilt yourself to do something. You can only do that because you respect yourself, because you love yourself, and you love also your future self. So right now you're taking the actions for your future self. And it's way easier to go through life and to achieve your goals if you are doing it from the position that it just feels good. It just feels good to do something for yourself because you respect yourself, because you respect your body. I think that it's the best way to like evolve to another person you want to be. You cannot do it by self-hatred, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I spent 40 years with self-hatred, and I am finally to the stage of acceptance. Haven't got to the love part yet. Not there yet, but working on it. Go through those stages, and so people can understand what each of those are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say that, okay, first we have this self-hatred. I think that the next step would be self-respect, that maybe you still don't accept yourself, but at least you respect yourself, maybe respect your body, and you have, respect. And then only you can go to like acceptance. You don't have to go to like self-love, because that's too much. Let's first accept that the facts. Let's look for some neutrality. Let's look for like middle ground, that okay, you don't have to say like I love myself. You can say like it is possible for other people to love themselves. It is possible for me to love myself. It is I can achieve that. Maybe I don't feel that today, but I can feel that one day. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to build the bridge from, for example, self-hatred to self-love, and we are doing that step by step. So first we're respecting our body, then maybe we accept our body and ourselves, then we try to look for some positives, and by building those bridge sentences or bridge beliefs, we can get to self-love. So it's not like we are jumping from self-hatred to self-love by just doing affirmations. We have to take the middle steps to get there.
Yeah, and it takes a while, especially if you're one of those people who have just beat themselves up for years.
Yeah.
I know for a good 20 years, I was cruel to my body. And, I hated it. I thought it was something different than me, because I had me, and then there's this body that I don't even know what this was doing.
Yeah.
It was not part of me. It was like an alien or something, And so, and I treated it like that, like it wasn't really part of me. But now I've kind of consolidated that and have accepted that, number one, I'm never going to be perfect body-wise. It's just not going to happen. I'm 54. I'll be 55 this year. It's not going to happen. I've had 2 kids. I've abused my body. I've gained and lost 80 to 100 pounds 4 times in my life, not to mention all the other times. It's not going to happen. And I accept that. I accept that. I accept that I'm not going to go out on the beach in a 2-piece and guys are going to be going, whoa, what was that? They may be going, whoa, but they're not going to be going, whoa. Yeah. And I'm okay with that now. I'm okay with that. I accept that. It's okay. And I just be the best I can be with what I have. And
that's perfect.
Your body changes, Okay, let's talk a little bit about body image. How does society shape our views of our bodies? And I know it sure did shape the way I viewed my body.
Yeah, that's pretty sad, because all what we see in the magazines and in media, those are like perfect bodies, which totally, they do not represent the whole society. So what we see in the media, on social media, is probably like the first 5% of the society, and rest of us are like left behind, and like, oh, let's don't look at those bodies, they don't exist, let's only show on social media and in media in general what is perfect, but perfect means also not achievable for everybody. So I think that it also contributes for people to develop binge eating disorder, because if binge eating disorder, starts with dieting, we diet because we want to get to that body shape that we see in media. So that's a problem. Yeah, definitely.
It's a huge problem, because I remember the first issue that I recognized that started me out on this path, I feel, was being in elementary school. And right about the age of 10, I started to develop. Well, because that wasn't typical of all the other little girls, it made me feel different and wrong, and that there was something wrong with my body. So that started me out already hating my body, going, this is not like everybody else. I'm weird. Yeah. It's ugly. It's not right. And so, my whole life I've hated the things that, part of that kind of make you a woman, right?
Yeah.
And I detested that. And, like with my husband, it makes him really sad, but I still, I'm not even sure I've hit the acceptance with that particular body part. At one point I was kind of like, okay, I think I can deal with this, whatever. And now I'm back to going, yeah, no, I don't like them. I just don't like them. And I really feel like it was from, back when I was 10.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's because of how you're viewed. I was teased, ooh, yeah. Look at that, and that's embarrassing. And then of course, as you get older, then the guys, woo, and you're like, yeah. No, because they're ick, and yeah. So, but it's in your head what is perceived as beauty or normal even.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that when somebody comes to you like what I just said? How would you break that down and help them to be able to accept a part of them that they detest, or their whole body in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would first say that we have to work on your thoughts around it. So let's just remember that what you are thinking right now, what is your belief, is sort of just a limiting belief, and you believe that only because you got that thought, and it's like a broken record in your brain. So it's not like you've chosen to think that. It's just something that was programmed into you, and right now it's just on a repeat all the time for all of those years. And if that took you, so many years, then it might be as automatic for you as I don't know, brushing your teeth. So I would say that the best way to start seeing it as a just mental habit. I have a mental habit of thinking about this problem, this body image issue, and it's just a habit. And if this is a habit, I can change it. I don't have to make it mean anything about me. So let's start, for example, by recognizing like, oh, that's just a thought. I do not think that thought because it's something I believe in. It's just thought that was repeated so many times that I'm repeating it, but I can choose to repeat different thought. So the best way is just to, catch yourself thinking that thought, challenge it, maybe even write down, on a piece of paper, pros and against that thought. Do you really believe that thought? And start to challenge it, start to change it. And I think that, of course, if this is wired into your brain, then, and if this is the belief you've been believing in for many, many years, it's not going to be easy to change it like within a week. Yeah. But everything is possible. Just because we have this, just because our brain is plastic and we can change everything we believe in. I believe that.
I believe it too, because, like I said, I've changed a lot through the years, in the last 4 years, a lot of change in my mental attitude towards my body. But, so many people, it just kills me to see that they have such a negative self-image. And yet when you look at them, you're like, what are you even talking about? What, why are you so upset? Just like my husband, he's like, people would kill to have what you have. And I'm like, they can have it. Then they have it then, and he's like, you don't understand. There's not a single guy in here that would say, and I'm like, really? That's what you're going to come at me with? Yeah. But yeah, it is very true. And do you think that is kind of a form of body dysmorphia? And does that kind of go together in somewhat with binge eating, like because of I call it trauma, because to me it was trauma.
Yeah.
And, trauma affects you. It can affect your health too. So do you think that that has any kind of a play with developing later in life, these issues to deal with your negative self-image, I guess you'd say?
Yeah, I would say that it is totally possible, and very many things, even like some minor incidents, can cause trauma in people. So I would say that it is possible that all of those things are somehow tied together, and they might cause later in life development of some eating disorder or body dysmorphia.
Did any of that happen to you? Can you pinpoint any time in your life where you just, like an event that just kind of happened that just really, stuck in your head that you kept replaying?
I don't think so, but I can tell you how my early life experiences shaped how I see women body, because you've mentioned one situation from your life. So my sis, I have two older sister, and one of them has big breasts, and she had the same experience probably as you did, that many people would comment on that, many people from our family. And I was the youngest sister, so me watching my sister going through that, I was like praying, like, please don't give me big breasts. I didn't wanted it. So my experience is that and my experience was that, for many people, what they want is big breasts. And for me, I didn't want it. So my childhood experience shaped me right now, that I'm totally fine with my boobs being the size they are. And I'm very happy that they are not big, because I watched my sister going through all of that. So again, I think that what we are going through during our teenage years, that is sort of important, and that shapes our beliefs.
Absolutely. And I have a funny story is people talk about how, they want large breasts and all that, and I'm just like, you have no clue what that's like. You just have no clue.
Yeah.
And it does shape how you see things. And speaking of that, as far like self-image and self-acceptance and the movement of, acceptance, everybody accept exactly what you are. It's okay to be overweight. It's okay. Like, for instance, cruise on the beach, and you'll see somebody who is very overweight wearing a bikini, and they're just kind of all hanging out, but they don't care. They're just, woo, they're what, accept me or deal, whatever. And then you have people like me who even, look decent in a bathing suit. I'd be like, I ain't doing that. But I would envy that person, because they had the, mental whatever to just say, to hell with you. I'm going to wear what I want, when I want, and how I want. But is that a good thing? I mean, do you think that's a good thing? And where I'm coming with that is people who have been told to, accept your body, love your body, all that, which is a great message. But it to me, sometimes it almost feels like it's, don't worry about obesity or whatever, because I'm looking at it as a health issue, not as an aesthetic issue. Yeah. And so in some sense, it bothers me, because I'm like, you're going to have so many health issues, not, you're so fat. No. But what do you think about that? The whole body image, positivity thing that goes on.
Yeah, so how I see it is that everybody has their body autonomy, and they can do whatever they want to. If somebody asks me for advice or my opinion on their body, I can do that. Other than that, they can do whatever they want to do. And in case of like accounts that promote body positivity, health at every size, I just take what is good for me, and I leave the rest behind. So let's say that they put up some kind of message, and I have my own internal interpretation, and I always try to make it positive. So instead of seeing the bad side of the message, I always try to see the positive and try to be, inspired. So if I would see a person, being proud of their even bigger, larger body, I would try to think like, oh my God, this person has a balls to do that. I can do that
confidence.
As well. Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to just look at it through the positive lens.
Yeah, and to me, it's like freedom.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things like being dealing with my food addiction. And now that I feel really comfortable with that freedom is awesome. But to be able to have the freedom where you don't give two craps when anybody else thinks about how you look. And I am not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm way better than I was. I'm in front of a camera, for heaven's sakes. I would have never done that. So I've come a long way, but I still recognize the fact that I am not comfortable enough just to wear whatever I want. I'm a little better. I wear some things that, are real flashy, that draws attention to me, which I would have never done before. So a little bit of improvement, but going on the beach and sometimes I'm just like, I still can't do that, but I envy that.
Yeah, but we also don't know what is happening in somebody else's head. They may still have insecurities. They might,
Very true.
go outside their comfort zone and show up on the beach in a bikini, but still internally they might have some troubles with that. So we have to be careful with like thinking.
That they don't
pretending
have issues.
that we know what is somebody's head, because they may also struggle, but they are pushing through.
Yeah, well, sometimes you just have to do that. And again, like with me doing podcasts, for instance, being in front of the camera instead of behind the camera is huge, but I make myself do that for growth, to get over that uncomfortableness. And so I think that's absolutely correct. Okay, let's see.
That's the same for me.
Okay, I think I might have, let me see what our time is like before I get into, okay. All right, well, I think we pretty much answered actually most of the stuff I have on my list. But if you could give somebody some advice, somebody who is really struggling with binge eating and they're frustrated and they've read the intuitive book, they've done all this kind of work, what can you tell them that will help them be able to deal with what they're feeling and be able to move forward and do something about it that's productive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the best would be just to reach out for help and to maybe receive some outside opinion of what is going on. And I think that it is also very comforting to talk to somebody who maybe works with this kind of people, because then that person can hold a space for you, and that person will approach you in a non-judgmental way. So I think that this is the best way, to just reach out for somebody who that knows something about binge eating, and they will probably point you out into the direction you have to go, even if you don't want to work with them in a coaching session, or you don't want to have a therapist. They still will point you out into the resources that might be helpful for you, because sometimes just googling something online, it won't help you. You need a real person who can look at your case and assess what would be best option for you.
I agree with that, absolutely. And I think, it's really hard to try to do things on your own, because support is crucial. Even with just changing diets, it's crucial you have some kind of support, because you have all these people who are not doing the same thing as you, and you feel like the freak, or like, something is not right with you. It makes it very difficult to sustain. So it would make sense it would be the same with binge eating recovery and also eating disorders too. It's very difficult to handle everything on your own. And it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, totally. But maybe it would be also important to open up to your friends and family, because knowing the prevalence of eating disorders, I think that you already know people who also struggle with eating disorders, but everybody just hides it because, you know, after when I talk to my friends from the past, all of a sudden, you know, everybody went through like problems with eating, but at the time nobody admitted to that. So I think that there are more people who struggle with the same as you do, but just nobody talks about it.
That's interesting you said that, because my family didn't really know. And my husband now, he was my boyfriend since I was 15. And so he was the one that actually figured it out and confronted me on it. My family didn't know. Matter of fact, my more extended family, like my aunts, when they see me put out these stories, because now I'm very open about it, and they're like, "Oh, honey, I had no idea. I did not know you had so much pain and you struggled so hard." And I'm like, yeah, but like, you're going to talk about it, right?
Sure.
You know, and an eating disorder, unless you're severely anorexic, isn't just, you know, sitting on your shoulder going, "Hello, you know, this is me, light here." Yeah. So, well, Natalia, thank you so much for joining me and coming on the podcast. It has been a blast. I'm glad I got to pick your brain. And y'all, subscribe to my channel and go follow Natalia. I'll have all her information below. She has some wonderful posts out there, and it doesn't matter what diet style you follow, her stuff is great and very helpful. So again, thank you so much, and you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure for me. Yeah. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye, Natalia.